Hi everyone, this is Dewey here. We have ourselves an exciting series of videos where I show you my struggles in upgrading this '89 Subaru GL into my dream wagon. Here's a few pictures of the marketplace listing and what the GL looked like when I picked it up. It sounded like he had a seized engine, so I offered $300 for it and picked it up not too far away from me. I've been monitoring marketplace for a few years at this point for a great starter GL, and I had some personal criteria like it had to be red around 1988 to 89 and had a bad engine, but good working two-speed trans. At this point, I've been building up my second gen Tacoma the past few years, and as I added more and more armor and weight to the truck, the further I felt I was moving away from simple outdoor living. Where I could just take a car into the woods with minimal gear, basically just my backpacking stuff, and live simply for a few days and be able to appreciate nature more rather than busting out all the gear that makes me comfortable and at times I feel distracted me from grounding myself with Mother Nature. I've had quite a bit of history with rebuilding Subaru EJ motors and have been daydreaming putting together the ultimate, in my mind, Subaru that can tackle all that I throw at it. And here in Oregon, we have an incredible OHV area called Browns Camp that we take our trucks into some pretty intense off-road scenarios. And if you ever done stuff like this, you understand the rating system on how difficult a track is. It's very similar to that of snowboarding and skiing. We have the easiest level, which is like a green circle, and then a more mild blue square and more aggressive black diamond. And of course, there's like further levels up, like double and triple blacks. I typically do a lot of harder blues and softer blacks in my Tacoma in the past few years. We've been getting more and more guys with Toyota trucks out there and just enjoying the wilderness. I wanted to challenge myself and see if a Subaru can do some of these. And I've been seeing that as we get larger and larger tires on our trucks, these obstacles just get easier and easier. So why not just take a dirt cheap car that's been crashed and rebuilt, take it further than it ever has gone? Now, I'm not trying to say I'm building a super hardcore Subaru off-roader. I just want something that can handle more obstacles in the woods, be reliable, fuel efficient. And I figured putting a more modern EJ251 from an early 2000s Outback with 160 horsepower doesn't sound much, but it's more than 75% more power than the EA82 it originally had at 90. And power to weight, it's close to WRX levels, yet I'm still able to use any small town gas station's run-of-the-mill 87 octane. I chose the EJ251 because it's the last gen of engines they had before they went to CAN network, and I just didn't want to deal with all the modules on the CAN bus. So the first step of this is acquiring the car, and I got this car back in July of 24, so here's what I've been up to since then. New development. Since I've taken out the engine, and now I'm looking for a parts car, I've gone into the interior. I've cleaned up the car, just vacuumed everything, and taken out any trash that the previous owner had. But I was able to take this seat, which comes from a 2004 Outback, and at the request of the wife, of course, so we can have heated seats. Took the framework from the old GL seats and disassembled everything from the bottom of the Outback seats and adapted them one together. I used a bunch of riv nuts to secure it down, pretty tight, pretty stout. And the issue I'm seeing is the seats are a little high. You can see they're sitting quite a ways above, which is kind of a commanding seating position, but overall it's sitting pretty good, pretty stout, pretty tight. Enough space for a passenger in the back too, so that's gonna be really nice. You can see how much legroom I have. I'm thinking this is typical driving position, but the gear shift is like right next. On the GL seats, we were really hunkered down, and I only have like a few inches, maybe, yeah, a couple inches of space above my head. That'd be okay for my wife, so we'll see how this seat's gonna install. I got so darn excited, I forgot to even make a video of what the
car looked like beforehand. So here we got 1989 Subaru GL. This model is a touring model, so it's got that raised roof line. Got this car for 300 bucks. I took the front seats out. They're for sale. Hopefully they get picked up before I have to throw away stuff, but these seats are from a 2004 Outback. And the car was named Cursed because it kept dying. So eventually the last time I said, screw it, get rid of the car. Kept the seats though, when he wants the heated seats. But yeah, the car's not too bad. Got a little bit of mouse tracks and stuff like that we'll have to clean up, but for the most part, pretty clean. Sure, it's going to clean up pretty good. Headliner is not too bad a condition. Super nice. I sat down here and I could actually sit up, and that is going to be game changer just for the mornings. Yeah, the goal here is to build this guy up to be a pretty competitively mild off-roader that I can take up with like a bunch of off-roading friends with their Tacomas and 4Runners. It's got a second-hand tailgate, and these are really hard to find. You know, see how that roof line is. And the previous owner put like these giant, I don't know how these are, 3.5 inch massive mufflers tips, so they're coming off. They came with these you know, standard 13-inch Subaru wheels and a 4x140. Tires are back from 2015. Relatively good tread left. Car is mostly rust free. Like it's not that bad at all. Very excited about it. The previous owner said that the car's oil pump ran out and the engine seized up. Paint's a little faded here. The only puddle of water I can see coming in might be from the rain tray, which I'll have to take a look at. But for 300 bucks, try and keep this in a budget build under 1,000 bucks. Try to find an Outback from 2004 that wasn't canned and has the EJ251 do a swap on it. Engine's mostly all there. The spare tire, which you may have saw underneath the muffler, I took out. It was actually sitting here, so got some evidence of some animals. There was a pelt of some kind, so definitely some animals growing. But I was just in the process of taking the engine out, so we'll see what it looks like afterwards. Pretty excited, trying to keep this low buck, but fun and you know, pretty modest, but adventurous out in the woods here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm over here in Portland, so we got Tillamook State Forest and a bunch of cool off-roading up in the woods, up north, south, east, everywhere. See you after the engine's out. So I saw there was this line here going back into the cab. Went to, looks like a vacuum line. It went to, can't really see it, but it's this line right here, and it goes underneath and down. And once I have the engine out, we'll make sure what that is. I think it's a vacuum line. Maybe all the controls in the dash are vacuum operated. Yay. All right, engine's out. Note, had to take off the fans because in order to pull the engine from the transmission, there are some studs coming from the trans, similar to ones right there. So a few inches of movement. There she is. Pretty dirty. No major signs of problems other than to take note that there was no water coming out of the heater hose, no water coming out from the lower and upper rad hoses. So maybe the engine didn't necessarily lose oil, but probably lost water, overheated, and seized. The block is completely seized, not moving at all. But yeah, AC lines were empty, so it was easy to take those off. Interestingly, how Subaru did quick turn here for their, I think that's the high pressure side. So yeah, there's not too much space because the where the engine sits on a GL is much more forward than it is on a Legacy. So we'll have to squeeze in an EJ25 in here, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep this rad. Now knowing that it lost water, we'll have to check to see if it's leaking anymore. But there's a little outlet right there we could test right there. But yeah, now time to source a cheap 2000 to 2004 Outback. The reason why is it's got the EJ25 with a manual, so it has the manual harness, and we will deal with splicing the wires that we need. Apparently we only need a few, and it's not on CAN, so it'll run with a few wires, I think 4, and it'll have extra power, and it has the suspension. So that's one of the main things I want to do with this build is I'm taking out that subframe. I'm swapping in the EJ style subframe along with all the suspension components, because see all those dinky arms right there? They're just so small, and it'd be nice to put in some real suspension on these guys. They could really benefit from that. And probably deal with some sort of hybrid axle, but we'll see as we go along. We may get away with using a stock Outback axle. The front is possible, a lot of people have done it before. The back is what's going to be fun, since the suspension is completely different. So we're going to have to fab up some mounting points on the body itself and trying to figure that out. Overall though, this is stage 1. Once we get the engine in, well, actually we'll share, we'll move over the engine on the Outback and its condition and what we can pull from it, salvage, sell, and make our budget real low buck. Trying to shoot for under 1,000 here. So parts wise, we have 300 on this car. Actually had another Subaru I was parting out, met a guy selling a rear diff. He also does the old style engines, and he had an adapter plate. That's one of the things we have to adapt this EA style transmission, the dual range, what we want to keep, right? And adapt it onto an EJ style, and he gave me that for 20 bucks. So that includes the flywheel re-drilled. So all I gotta do now is find the hardware, which shouldn't be too hard, and got a new clutch. That was 80 bucks. So we're 400 bucks in right now. We'll see how it goes. Catch you in the next one. Hey guys, an update for y'all. The engine is out. The car is on stands. And the seats are in. Winnie's side is a little tall, so I have to cut these down probably maybe 3/4 of an inch. You can see they sit a little bit taller than the driver's side and a little tilted. But I'm super stoked about this high top. It'd be nice to camp in it. And then I found these old racks I got from like an old Rabbit actually that I had, and they fit just perfect. Anyway, this is an update for you guys because I wanted to share, and hopefully we can get a sacrificial Outback for parts. We'll start swapping in engines and stuff. Okay, bye. We got ourselves a parts car. 2002 Subaru Outback. I think it has like 250,000 miles on it. It's not the limited model, but 245K. Runs and drives actually pretty decent. Tire was flat, but overall pretty solid car. Started taking some parts off because I did a compression check to see the health of the engine. Recorded 210, 220, and then 225 were the other cylinders, running really good. I was actually pulling like pretty lugged speed. I think it was like, 4th gear at like 25 miles per hour, and it was still pulling pretty good. So I know the engine's running good, but it smokes. It smokes. Hardly any blow by. So I'm thinking it's valve stems that are leaking and the engine's just eating oil. But Got the car for 700, hoping the transmission can sell for 300. It ships with no grinding, and maybe seats and stuff will make up for some of the costs. Anywho, the engine's pretty good. Got here, timing belt changed out at 159K, so it's due, and no belt here for the AC, so I suspect its compressor is blown. Start piecing and parting out this car. Hopefully use it for swapping it over to the GL. It's pretty cool. I'll do a lot of digging on the front and rear suspension and try and see how much it will swap over. I imagine there's gonna be a lot of wiring. Sorry, a lot of sheet metal for the rear. And then on with the wiring, hopefully this will be a swap where I won't get too much into the wiring. I saw someone do it where they took like an army ammo box and they stuck it into the little wheel well where the spare tire is on a GL, and pretty much putting all the wiring there, so it would be a way and out of the inside cab of the GL. So we'll give it a shot and see how it goes. And just like that, the engine's out. Pretty clean engine, not too bad. Fought a little bit, but not too bad. I'll pull that transmission, sell it, and start doing wiring, attaching it into that GL in the back. Woohoo! Kind of see the cross hatch in there. Pretty clean. And look, it's a factory block heater. Weird. Sit rep, everything looks really good. The bore is really clean on all 4 cylinders. The rod bearings are super tight. Not super tight, like good. Feels good. I kind of even see the crosshatch markings. I'm not sure this engine was maybe previously rebuilt in the past. However, I don't think they ever opened up the rings, and I think I found out why this engine was blowing so much oil. You can see how dirty, I'm not sure if I can get this in focus, but it is very crusty, the oil rings, especially in number 2. So 2 and 4, pretty bad. You can see here, like, man, doesn't look that bad, but those oil rings are kind of sooty. So take note, gotta do your oil changes. Good thing I got a new pack of these rings, put it back together. We'll see what happens after this. I realized in my disassembly that all the compression rings and actually physically the oil rings are in good condition. I'm gonna try and put them into the ultrasonic cleaner and see if it can get some of the dirt off and clean up. If it does, I think we'll be able to use these. Just take note, the bottom compression ring has a really sharp outer edge. Meanwhile, the top compression ring on the upper side, there's a slight chamfer, so that's how you can distinguish them. I'm gonna throw in some cleaning solution into these bags, fill that up with water, and let it run for a couple cycles, and get back to you on that. Yo, check out how dirty that is. I'm sure that cleaned up pretty good. Hi, on this episode of What Have I Gotten Myself Into? That is a lot of wiring. This is the whole engine and basically behind the dash harness, including the fuse boxes. So this is the one that's sitting on the engine bay, driver's side, and that's the one under the steering wheel. I just weighed this, 27 pounds. It's a heifer. So I'm gonna have to thin out all the wiring I don't need. So all I need is engine management stuff. Keeping the OBD2 sensor, diagnostic connectors right there. Hopefully this comes down to like less than 10 pounds, but we'll see. I might have to keep the fuse boxes, but not, of course, not all the wiring to it. All right, we'll see what happens. I'm just gonna take scissors, clips, razor blade and try to just take off all of the sheathing and duct tape. To be continued. Okay, so I wanted to make a video about my methodology on thinning out the harness. Here's the whole dash harness right here. That those two spots are where the grommets used to sit, and that's where the rest of the harness goes into the engine. That portion of the harness goes into the fuse box underneath the hood. Here's the dash fuse box. I've disconnected this portion that I think goes to mostly switches like the fog lights and cruise control and other switches here. Don't really know how to deal with that yet. But for the time being, what I do know are a lot of these modules I pulled along with the harness. For example, this one here, it says DRL. And absolutely, I don't want certain modules, right? So like some things I don't need. I just want stuff that's pertinent to the engine running, supplying of power, and the ECU controlling the rest of the engine. So I know I don't need this harness connected to this. So I'm going to start one at a time, pulling these wires out from the loom. And if they're most likely a power wire, tracing them back. So for instance, that connector right there, that connection is what goes through the grommet on the fender, going to that harness right here for underneath the hood fuse box. So I want to make sure I follow this power wire going to this DRL, because it apparently pulls power from underneath the hood fuse box, going to that portion and then disconnecting it. You know, having a shop manual where I can figure out which fuse it's connected to, that would help as well. Just a little tidbit. I'm going to keep working at it, and I'll give you more updates as I go along. All right, sit rep. Got the harness all bunched up into the inside of this Harbor Freight ammo canister. Pretty cool. Was able to shove the ECU in just right. You can see it's got the diagnostic connector, it's got the green troubleshooting connectors. That branch right there goes to the ignition switch. This branch goes to the fuse box, which I still have to lay it out in the engine bay, because the lines that go to positive battery and the alternator sit right here. And then we have the lines for the engine connectors and the starter line. So it's condensed down, and I'll mock it up on the engine and see how it looks. All right, I was able to get ECU and all the wiring into this box. Here's the main fuse box out here. Like I said, will sit on the engine bay and all the connections, but pretty tight. Had to, like I said earlier, notch this portion out, drill a hole through there, still got the diagnostic connector, and yeah. Check out all the wiring I had to take out. All right, I got it laid out here. And this is where the spare tire used to be. We'll have to find some way to really secure the box down, but it's looking like it's going to sit pretty good. Ignition switch, that can be routed later on, but we could isolate this whole system and have the engine run separately from the GL's wiring. But the fuse box seems like it can fit somewhere around here just fine. The wiring might have to be looped around the master brake cylinder, but it seems like the wiring seems like it's all in good position. This connector is definitely long enough to reach the engine, and the connector is right here for the engine side. I think I'm going to cut some holes to allow the wires to be fed through. That way I can install a grommet and somewhat keep the moisture and elements outside of the box and innards. But looking pretty good right there. Okay, rigged up. Got the engine on the engine stand. Honestly, the grounds that we need is the one coming from the ECM. I wired it to the engine ground, and then the ground cable goes to the battery, because all the rest of the grounds come from either the engine harness right there or this single ground here. I'm sorry, this ground is actually for the main relay. So the main relay uses this ground, and everything else goes through the harness. Plugged in my OBD2, it's connecting, and actually can putting out data, harness and everything on. I wired up a light here to imitate a starter motor, and turning the key, it turns light on. So everything seems to be working fine. I'm gonna try and put everything together. I I cut a little notch here, so this part of the harness will come through here. I'm waiting for a dozer kit to drill a hole through the box, and then we can have this entire engine harness go through that, and hopefully that'll be sealed up. But yeah, next step is throwing it into the engine bay and firing it up. So I'm also using a jack underneath the transmission to lift it up off of the front crossmember. But once we get the engine pre-lined up, there's a lot more space. I'm seeing more like an inch of space, so it's not too bad. I think this is something now that is documented when we do an EJ onto an EA. See how close everything is? It's clearing, but this Harbor Freight, I don't know what you call it, engine, it's called a load leveler. It's very helpful because look how close it is. Touching up against the rat support, and you got about like, I would say about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. But once it goes down and lands in those holes, I think it should be pretty good. It's in, guys. 2002, 1989. All right, I want to talk about all the hardware and the adapter plate. So not a lot of people talk about these adapter plates, other than if you buy the kit, it comes with all the bolts that you need. So for my setup, I got this plate from a guy I met, and this is the type that's not the offset bolts, but actually the threads. I would recommend this one because you're not using just welds to keep the two pieces together, or three. So what we have right here is, on the EA side, something to note, the bottom bolt right there of the starter is actually threaded into the casing, the bell housing of the transmission. So there's no pass through there. The plate itself, the adapter plate, is threaded with a stud that comes out through here. Out through here, and is threaded here with American bolts, both sides. What you need is the studs that come out from the engine side at the bottom, go through the bottom 2 holes over there, and it's just an M10 bolt, 14 or 15 mil heads right there. And then you got to get American, I think it's 3/8-16 bolts. This side I had to get a 2 3/4, but they only sell 3 inches. They don't do that. It jumped from 2.5 to 3, so I decided to just buy the 3-inch, cut it 1/4 inch off, put in a washer. Same on the other side, it's only a 2-inch and a washer, and that was enough to thread into the adapter plate itself. That's all that connects. 2 bolts on top, 2 bolts on the bottom, or nuts on the bottom, and that's how the engine attaches to the EA style transmission. There we go. If it was the type with the offset bolts, basically this head here and that head there would be sharing a stud, or however they end up doing it. Okay, thanks. All right, got everything hooked up. You can see the OB2 is reading. Key switch on. Just crank it. Pretty good. Try to see if it'll start. Let's see if any fuel comes through. Watching the key. Oh yeah. A lot of gas. Pretty dirty. We'll see how it works. Okay, round 2. here's how I mounted the pitch mount. And I cut the pitch mount from the EA. I believe it was 5.5 inches shorter. And I will show you in a little bit how the air box from the EJ fits with this ammo toolbox right behind it. And there you go. The air box is on. It is a snug fit. It holds the box really well. So now we got a filter and a spot for where these hoses come in from, the heads on both sides into the air box. So since this car is a manifold air pressure sensor, it doesn't use a MAF, so that's very convenient and easy to route. Yep. Now she's running real good. She's running 3 cylinders for a while. Couldn't find out why. Took a thermometer for the exhaust. I saw that cylinder 4 wasn't firing. Swapped the coil leads and saw that if I took off number 4, the engine runs the same poorly. So bad coil. Had spare one, threw it in. Runs really good now. No shaking. That's great. So the difficult thing about putting an EJ style radiator is that this outlet touches right up with this pulley for the alternator, and actually this morning it cut through, so devised a different means of routing it, using the original EJ top hose. I cut it, and we have here just like a plumbing piece, 1.5 inch by 4 inch piece of stainless, pretty stout. Tighten those down real good and hopefully it won't leak. And this part number is this guy here. I don't know, I was looking through the hoses they have over at AutoZone, and it seems like this gives me a lot more clearance. And you know, especially as this warms up and expands out with the pressure, it shouldn't hit and break off, or sorry, slice into the hose. So we'll see how that goes. My solution for the oil pressure: grabbed this guy from the EA engine. I used an inch extender, 1/8 NIP, male, and then a female 45 degree, and then I have a adapter from 1/8 inch to 3/8 of an inch, and that can screw straight into the sending unit. And I've mocked up the alternator and it sits just right, so tighten it down real good, and then we'll check for oil leaks.
So that concludes with stage 1 for our Subaru GL, where we swapped in this EJ25, ran through some of the hardware challenges and a lot of the electrical wiring mess that we had to go through. I didn't touch on some things, little stuff like the alternator. I had a hard time wiring it up so it can actually charge correctly. So I actually burned out an alternator and a battery, but in the long run, as long as you have a wiring schematic, you should be pretty clear on how you should wire stuff like that. And of course, the radiator, you know, that whole routing mess and eventually rubbing issue was just mitigated with a whole different radiator. You know, in the end, $80 more wasn't too much to add to the tally, and I'll do a little running tally after stage 1 after this. Next for stage 2 is swapping in the subframe and suspension, both front and rear, and my approach on building coilovers, because the market for Subaru coilovers is so expensive. What can we do with that? I also decided to go for a set of torque locker for the rear, and that proved to be very fun. For the running tally, we have ourselves here 300 bucks for the car, 700 for the donor car, 60 for the clutch, 20 for the adapter plate. I sold the GL seats for 40, the Outback seats from the donor car for 120. The radiator fan was 40. The hose combination, the original concept was 30. The hatch was uh, sagging a lot, so struts for 40. Head gasket set, timing belt, seals. Threw in some speakers for the doors, a stereo off Amazon. I sold the donor Outback Trans and wheels and tires for the GL. I bought some winter tires, which ended up not working at all. There was a puncture, so um, also was able to sell the donor fog lights and the radiator, and then buying the legacy radiator. So bore math, I'm just under $1,000, well below my budget build. It was a renting car. Um, there was some other stuff, I mentioned the alternator and the battery, which, you can buy cheap batteries and swap them out at your pick and pull or local junkyard. I also got a cheap spare alternator that was laying around from a previous project, but in all, I'm pretty sure I'm well under $1,000. So yeah, thanks for watching my series. The next video will be about stage two and the pain I had to go through to get through all of that. So see you then.